Just how fast was Usain Bolt's gold medal sprint? Let's put him on a slightly bigger stage and see him race against every Olympic medalist since 1896. This imaginary race, assembled using runners' average speeds, reveals just how much faster sprinters have become. A few lanes over, we see another Usain Bolt, who dominated the field in Beijing in 2008. Almost 10 feet back, Carl Lewis, gold medalist in Seoul in 1988. He won in 1984 too, one of just a handful of sprinters on this track twice. As we go further back in time, we pass more of the fastest sprinters in history. Jim Hines, the first man to break 10 seconds in the Olympics. Jesse Owens, who won 4 golds in Berlin in 1936. Archie Hahn, the Milwaukee Meteor, who won 3 events in 1904. And finally, near the end of this track, we have Tom Burke, who won in Athens in 1896. His time, 12 seconds, puts him more than 60 feet behind today's winner. So what can we take away from this picture? For one, a lot of these sprinters are from the US. Although Americans have had a rivalry with British sprinters, and, more recently, Caribbean athletes, nearly half of these runners are Americans. But we can also see that glory is fleeting. Repeat performances are rare. There's been a new winner on the podium in all but 3 Olympics. But to get a little bit more perspective, let's see how some of America's best young sprinters would fit into this group. Here are the fastest kids at the 100-meter dash at different ages, as recorded by the Amateur Athletic Association. Obviously, they're way behind today's athletes, but they're not as far behind as you might expect. America's fastest 8-year-old did the 100-meter dash in 13.5 seconds, which would have put him less than a second off 3rd place in 1896. Not bad for grade school. And the record for 15 to 16-year-olds is a 10.27. Good enough for a bronze as recently as 1980. Still, it's not like those Olympians were slow. Despite more than a century of improvements in nutrition, fitness, footwear, and track surfaces, the difference between today's athletes and the fastest humans of the 19th century? Just about 3 seconds.
All right, that's the intro. I show that because it sort of intros me a little bit. I love my running, I love athletics, and I love the Olympics. And I just love visual charting just like that, because it's a chart, that thing. It's a living, moving, breathing sort of chart that shows you very effectively and very quickly what its creator wishes to tell you. He can't tell you any quicker how much faster American people are than the rest of the world, than he did just there, or how fast the fastest 8-year-old in America would compete with the guy who ran right back in 1880. He can tell you those things, but you can't see it, and you can't feel it like you can by watching the video. So I love that chart. I look at it and think, I can see different things. I can see why is it that Caribbean and US athletes, is it the drug program, is it the whatever? I think, can I see in the patterns that of the US athletes and the as the times get quicker, can I see patterns? Can I see Nandrolone in 1986 or 84 or whatever it was? Can I, what can I get from this chart that I might not be able to get from the written word or someone talking to me? I am Adrian Fittolani, that's me. I'm from Invato. I'm in the Invato room, actually, if you saw James Ross speaking in here earlier. I'm the program manager there, and I'm going to speak today about charting, well, charting Scrum, but these things apply to pretty much all Agile spheres. There's going to be stuff here that you see that's not really specific to Scrum. I thought about charts and the way that they're interpreted today and used today, and the most popular or sort of use of charts in the last few years has been the infographic. So my presentation I put together as an infographic. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to first start out about a little bit about charting history. I'm a bit of a, it's sort of an interest of mine, this visual sort of communication of statistics. So how do we chart things and where did the idea come from and things like that. So I've been interested in that. We'll also look at how charts became popular in things like project management and workflow management. We'll look at charts particularly in Agile and Scrum, and then move on to some examples of those exact things. So I'm going to show you the charts 101, the burn downs, the burn ups, the things like that you might be using already. But I'm going to show you, I'm very confident I'll show you some things that you might not have seen before, and maybe you can use yourselves. That'll be in the deeper water section. At the end, I've got versions of these to sort of turn you towards. I've got Excel versions of the charts that I show you, and Google Docs versions of that as well. So I'll turn you towards those at the end. Okay. So I want to start. This is where I like to start. I like these old charts. This is old charty stuff. This is Joseph Priestley, and Joseph Priestley lived in the mid-1700s, and this is his hand-drawn chart. He and William Playfair, who we'll get to in a moment, were sort of known now as the grandfathers of modern charting. They invented these charts, and it's hard to imagine a time just over 200 years ago where we didn't have this. And you could draw it on a piece of paper and look at it and say, I invented that. It's a timeline. It just shows the lives and how they, across a timeline of people or men in history, no women on that chart, who Joseph Priestley admired. About 15, 20 years later, along came William Playfair, and he took up the work of Priestley and invented pie charts. He invented these things. He invented this pie chart. It shows, this one shows state by state in America at that time, population and tax income percentages. He invented this one. This is an area chart. He invented the area chart. This shows nations in Europe and their ebbing and flowing wealth over time, over different periods. But you can see, I mean, at the time this was revolutionary. He's showing these things visually. No one had thought of doing this before. He invented bar charts. This one shows exports and imports in Scotland. What the biggest import was and the smallest import. He invented this one too, and this one shows something like population of different countries in Europe, but whatever this is, it never took off, but he invented it. We don't really know what it's called. Okay, now I'm going to move on to Adrian's controversial section, why Henry Gantt should be your hero. Henry Gantt was an American industrialist. He was a person engaged in factory improvements. His major caper was, how do we lay out the factory so that we can become more efficient? Unfortunately, his name has become synonymous with one thing, and it has become the bane of many people's lives, and I think demonised a little bit. Anyone know what this is? Gantt chart. Yeah, it's a Gantt chart. It's beautiful. I love Gantt charts. Love them. Former project manager. Oh, I'm a program manager, but I'm a former sort of waterfall-y type project manager, and I love this stuff. This one happens to be for a bridge building project in Germany. It doesn't show events over time, but it shows the consumption of materials in construction of that bridge over time. This is great, and why I say I love this is because it's for a bridge building project. And Gantt charts are good for bridge building projects and railway building projects and house building projects and build the Rialto type things. They just don't happen to be applicable to what we do, as well as some of the other things that we've explored and discovered in the last few years. So I love Henry Gantt, love him a lot. Anyone know what this is? Again, no secret, it says on here. It's a Gantt chart. This is another type of Gantt chart. This is one of Henry Gantt's own Gantt charts. Now what Henry Gantt said of his own charts were that they were a view, not a plan. He said, my charts present a view of what's going on, not a plan for what's going on. And that's a great distinction to make because, hey, don't blame Henry for the misapplication of project management systems in the 1970s and beyond. He died in 1912 or something, 1812. He's long gone. It wasn't his fault. What he's doing here, I'll explain this one. The dark bar here shows the planned work day. We're going to work from here to here. This number here shows how many machine parts in this factory we're going to make today. We aim to make 100. This line here shows the actual. He's charting daily, actually it looks like 5 times a day, how many parts have been made in that factory today. He's just charting it. He's not saying it's a target. He's not saying we need to meet these estimates. He's just saying this is our estimate and this is what we got to. These little ticks under here, these show the cumulative number of parts made for the week. And that's the same as that one. That one there shows. Anyone recognise this? Anyone not see that Henry Gantt is tracking velocity in order to get an understanding of throughput so that he can better understand the things that he might do in relaying the factory? This is what Henry Gantt did, and this is his legacy, and I'm on a mission to correct it. So that's why Henry made charts. Why would you make charts? Why should you do it in your jobs? Why do I do it? Well, I do it for these reasons. Visual learners, 65%. Far from a proven thing, but it's believed that 65% of people are visual learners, meaning they learn best by seeing something. Next is auditory, they learn best by hearing something, and kinesthetic, meaning they have to do it. 5% of people kinesthetic, 30% auditory. Even if it is 65%, I reckon this bit's true. Everybody, in some way, is a visual learner. Even if you learn best by hearing it, you'll still pick it up by seeing it. I reckon it'll be your second. So all across the world, people need feedback, and it's good for everybody. People outside the teams and outside of development, they can get something from your charts if you're charting progress or you're charting something that's interesting to them. And inside the teams, of course, the charts can give them behavioural or productivity or quality scores or the things like James was showing this morning, tracking progress towards a particular outcome. So what are those outcomes? And this is where we start to get a little bit serious. You have to track the things that matter. You can't afford to allow the things that you're measuring become the things that the wrong things. And I want to just switch on my phone here because this is where my notes are. But I want to talk just to hear about the Hawthorne Effect. So there's a guy, Mike Griffiths, who I admire greatly. He's the guy who's inserted the Agile stuff into the recent update of the project management body of knowledge, and he's a tireless worker for our sort of movement in those circles. And he talks a lot about the Hawthorne Effect, and the Hawthorne Effect it basically means you get what you measure. It came from a set of experiments that happened in the Hawthorne electrical factory where some guys were making telephone relays, and they said, well, put them in a special room, and we'll turn the lights up bright, and we'll see if they make any more than they did last week. And they did these experiments for 5 years. But what they found was, they got some special guys, they put them in a room, they turned the lights up bright, and productivity went up. They made more relays. So they said, oh, well, what else do we do? We'll try and turn them up brighter. And they turned it up brighter, and the productivity went up. They made more relays. Okay, they said, let's normalise it. Let's get it back. Put it down low, back to where it was. And productivity went up, and they made more relays. The Hawthorne Effect simply means if you're watching something, in this case, we're watching the number of relays made each week, and you make a big deal about that, and you enclose off some special people in a team, and you say, you guys, we're going to watch how many relays you make. Guess what happens? The number of relays they make goes up, just because you did that. So the lights were a bit of a placebo, I suppose, if I can use that word, but it didn't really matter that the lights went up. It mattered that they were measuring the number, and that they were concentrating on that measure. You will get what you measure. So make sure you're measuring the right things. Measure, and I really like James's thing this morning. James talked about measuring and tracking the behaviours that you wish to change in yourself. And this goes one step further. Measure and track the behaviours which you wish to instill, or see that your company or your organisation or your teams to exhibit. The ones you want, those are the things you need to measure. So these are some examples. If you make velocity, for example, you could track it. But if you make velocity your one measure, guess what's going to happen? Velocity is going to go up. And if you're concentrating on that and not worrying about the quality and not worrying about the other important cultural things that might apply to your team, you'll start to get, velocity's going up, everyone's happy, and suddenly you've got some big quality problems and tech debt problems down the line. Things start to game the system to get that. So look at the other things. How many defects per 1,000 lines of code? Maybe. And this is not about telling you which ones to do. This is some ideas about some of the things you might track. Turnaround time on bugs. How quickly are we getting them back out the door once we know about them? Are they the first thing we're working on in iteration or the last thing? Are we putting them on the long finger? Defect reporting. Det points. If you've got a facility or a way of assigning a value to your det points, then maybe you should be tracking those. Code coverage of automated tests, a great agile thing to do. Features done versus features remaining. If you're a projecty guy like me, that's a nice thing to have on your list. Customer satisfaction. Use Kano model of customer satisfaction. Can you do that? Can you put a chart around that? Can you measure it? Sponsor confidence. This is massive for me, and I've just been in Wayne's Toyota car to think retrospective actions achieved. Are you scientifically moving towards a better outcome in your teams? Can you show that? Can you chart that? Can we measure it? What are the improvements you're trying to make, and how are you showing me that you're tracking towards them? Team satisfaction. Maybe do a 360 on your teams. See how happy they are. Whatever you do, remember this one. Dude's Law. I can't remember his name. Does anyone know his name? He's known as the Dude. I mean, fair dinkum. You put it on your website. I'm a Agile mentor, and people call me the Dude. That's why I can't remember his name. Not worth it. He says that value equals the why over how. Don't worry. Don't get bogged down too much in how you're doing things. Don't worry too much about your processes. They'll emerge from why. Why do we want to do these things? What is it we want to achieve? In our circles, we want to be better community members. We want, if we're doing it right, I feel that in software teams we want to open our doors to having other people inspect and welcome them into the things that we're doing.
Adrian, I can't remember his name either, but he's called the Dude because he looks like the Big Lebowski. So everyone calls him the Dude.
So he's this is important to us. Those things, those principles, those values that we hold dear have given birth to all of the things that we do. So the iteration and the stand-up and the things that facilitate communication between us come from a set of values, and that's the why. So don't get too bogged down in the how, because those things might happen another way. Concentrate and measure the why, if you can. Okay, let's get to some examples. These ones I'm about to show you, some of them are pretty standard, but these ones focus on team stuff. So this is, all my things are about learning and communicating that I'm going to show you here. It's not about driving a metric. Please, please, please. I just can't say it enough. These things are not about driving a metric and seeing it go up and to the right. This is about learning from what you're doing and understanding how you're improving towards your own objectives, okay? Good. So some of these are for the team. You want the teams to understand a little bit more about what's going on, and in their teams you can use charts like this. Everyone's seen this one? This one is a sprint burn down, and this one uses hours. This is the collective number of hours available to the team, and this is the collective number of hours estimated in sprint planning that they assume is going to be the result or the delivery of the increment. And as those hours burn and they estimate the time remaining on the next task and the next task throughout the sprint, these hours burn down. Ideally, they'd hover somewhere around this line so that we know earlier if we think we've got a problem. Again, it's not about kicking someone's ass over this. It's about learning back here that, oh shit, looks like we're not going to make it. Let's make some decisions. Let's have a conversation about what we can do about that. It's not about driving those teams to get better or to hide hours and pretend like they're going to make it. I want to get through these two quickly because they're pretty much standard. This is a burn up. I think this is more popular within teams than a burn down, and certainly less arduous on their time. They don't have to record hours and things like this. It's just, you probably do both. Record the number of story points delivered daily in order to derive an understanding of your sprint signature, so that then you can say, hey guys, do we reckon we can get better next week or next iteration by delivering something? Can we get some runs on the board in the first 3 days? Doesn't look like we're going to make it here. We're on day 7. But can we get some runs on the board on the in the first week? If you're seeing a big hockey stick in your burner, you've probably got some problems. And that's just a behavioural thing. And it's not something you want to be clouding people with, but teams will get that. Teams will understand that if we're seeing no action on this list until day 8, day 9, day 10, Of course, they're going to understand. They're less likely to actually deliver the increment than if they were consistently delivering daily. Cumulative flow. This one shows the stages of development from to do all the way through to done. And the idea of this is to gain an understanding of where your bottlenecks are. If you see a widening, as you do here in the pink, is this pink? I've got a big colour block, this pink section. Yep. If you see it widening, you've probably got a bottleneck there in the stage after. So the use of work in progress limits in Kanban might be an idea here. Can we limit the stuff that's in the design review, because we see things are getting backed up in the in progress queue. So if you see a widening there, I'm just going to create this every day. This is the number of jobs in that area. This is not story points. This is the number of jobs, the number of jobs in each of these areas each day. It's a really good one for your work in progress limits. Spectral analysis, another one that's really related to, I suppose, more popularly Kanban than Scrum. So this one will give you, this is all story points, all cycle times over time. So as the stories come out, we're just tracking how many days they took from one point to another. Whatever your cycle time preference is it from when the idea hits the wall and the product owner is now writing about it, or is it when it goes into development? Wherever you're trying to track, the cycle time between here and here is great to understand. And if you record them over time and put them on a chart like this, you can now understand things like your service level agreements that most of our jobs looks like. And over time, all but 6 of our jobs were done in 5 days or less. So you can understand a little bit more when you're if you're trying to sign up for, we turn around bugs in 5 days, or we turn around features in this much time. You can use a chart like this to say, hey, historically we don't do that. Historically we do. Another cycle time chart. One goal of many Agile teams is to make stuff smaller, get it through faster. Make it constant delivery of value all of the time. Make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller. You notice I'm not saying make it faster, make it faster, make it faster. One will come from the other. Try and make it smaller, and measure that stuff. This is a chart that we will see go down and to the right over time if you're successful in that. If you're looking for that behaviour, this might be a good one to use. It shows cycle time over time. So as the stories are delivered, you're probably guessing they're working in iterations here. These 3 stories delivered on this date. Cycle time is 5, 4, and 2 for those 3 stories. So if we're making things smaller, and this is a real project chart, you see they started out here, they took on a little bit more, they're learning a bit as a team, cycle times went up, we're now sort of back here. And seeing that most of our stuff is hovering around a band in this little mid area here. Can we put it down to standard deviation, or do you want to talk about it? Have another conversation. I love this chart. Teams I've found love this chart. Okay, project charts. This is my caper, I suppose, as program manager. But again, I don't want to be producing metrics and tracking metrics that drive the wrong behaviours or give teams the wrong impression about me and our organisation. I really don't want teams to be scared about what we're tracking. If they fear that those metrics are going to be used against them later on, I think you're on the road to some pretty severe cultural problems. So here's some of the ones that I use and have used that I feel do that. Projects, I've got to say, haven't gone away just because we're Agile, right? Projects still happen. So we sometimes have things that we know the outcome of, and we have a fixed time in which to do them, and we have a budget which we hope to stay close to as we track along. And this one replaces the old earned value idea that we used to use in project management. Earned value is the money to the budget consumed versus the amount of work done so far. Gives you an earned value score. This one just does time and budget. How much time has passed? On an ideal rate, we would expend the budget at this rate until the project's end date on the 5th of April, I think that is, 5th of April. So this blue one will show you how complete we are, assumed complete. I'll show you a chart in a minute that sort of makes this assumption pretty baffling. And this is pretty something you can really track, is the budget consumed. So long as these two things stay up and to the left, it really doesn't matter if they cross over, because we're going to finish the thing and we're going to burn the money, but we're going to do it before the date. So that's cool. Actually, if the blue line comes up this way and the red line comes up this way, that's cool too, because we're going to finish early and we're not going to spend all the money. But if you've got them the other way, the blue one's tracking out this way and the money's up this way, or they're both tracking out this way, let's have some conversation about how this project's really going. We're not going to finish on time, and we're going to spend all the money before we're finished. Bug tracking is a good one. This one shows bugs known at any one point in time and bugs completed in any one iteration. And this one here shows the current known bugs. So these will always climb. This is a chart you can't run for too long, because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger so long as you're getting bugs. It's always designed to get bigger and up and to the right. What you're looking for is to see that this gap doesn't grow. This gap shows the number of bugs reported versus the number of bugs fixed. If that's getting wider, and this is the same gap here, this area at the bottom, this shows the gap. If this is getting wider and wider, more bugs are being reported than you're fixing. That's a behavioural change that you probably want to look at. Are we looking at those in time? Are we turning it around quick enough? Are we concentrating on quality? Okay, this is the Forecast Lighthouse. I invented it. Thanks. I just call it that. It's nothing new. It's like it's just a project tracking chart. This one shows a few things, and I've got more stuff on it now. I'm using it now, and I've got even more stuff on it. So it's one that you probably want to use for yourself if you're a projecty type guy, but it might be a little confusing for other people. This one shows velocity, and these bars show velocity. Each iteration recording the number of story points completed. Again, driving home to those teams that that's not a metric we're trying to improve upon, it's just a metric we're trying to understand. This area here shows the number of story points known in the backlog. So on this same project, we see that I reckon we did a good job at the start. We got some work together, stuff that we knew about, and we started work. As we start work, we see the backlog grow and grow and grow, as it should. We're not trying to do big upfront design here. We're trying to get enough work that we understand to put to the teams, which we did here, and we got them going. And then we learned some more, and we put some more stuff in the backlog, and we got them to do a little bit more. But if this doesn't stop going up at some point, this project's never ever going to finish. So with this under your belt, with this under your arm, you can walk into that CEO's office and say, listen, you asked me why the project's gone off track. I can show you in one chart. Scope keeps driving up and up and up, and it's never ending. Unless we can get some stuff out of this program backlog or out of this product backlog, we're not going to make the date. We're just having another conversation. We facilitated the beginning of another conversation with some factual data that arms the CEO perhaps to make a very important decision, one that he might not have had the data to make if we'd given him a Gantt chart. This line here shows this is my proudest moment when I actually worked out how to do this. This shows that at the average burn rate, at the average velocity of the last 2 sprints, actually the chart allows it to be variable, the exhaustion of this backlog is at this time. It basically makes a prediction on the end of the project. So if this does keep going up, it's okay because we're burning stuff, and these hover around the same time because we're burning a little bit more than we're adding all of the time. But if this starts to go up, and this will start to go out.
Sorry, are you tracking this against story points, or are you tracking it against
Yeah, this is
cars?
story points. So this is story points in the backlog, and velocity as a story point metric as well. So, velocity, size of backlog, and the point at which we would expect to exhaust that backlog at the average of the last 2 iterations velocity. Okay, other charts. So we've got some team charts and we've got some project charts there. These are some others that I've collected. I haven't used these, but I reckon I have used some of them. I haven't used this one. This is a bubble chart that allows a real company, that's why I've blurred that thing, to select the features that they want. So this axis shows strategic value, this axis shows customer impact, and the size of the bubble, revenue potential. So this one can be compared to this one here. This is the greatest impact on the customer, the greatest strategic value, and also represents pretty large revenue opportunity. So it's a visual way to help you decide which features you might build. You can score them. You use their weighted next job first, or whatever whatever your metrics are to do this. Okay, I like this one too. Project Manager Man, risk matrix. It's one of the nice things that traditional project management has given us. Does anyone not know what this one looks like or what it does? I don't need to explain it at all? Cool. This is the last one I've got, I think. It's a parking lot chart, and it's a little bit like my forecast chart. So the parking lot chart shows the components or the features to be built, and the components of those features, I suppose. But the size of this shows how much work, the size of the effort you think this is. This is the estimated size of that job. This shows when we're hoping to have it, and this little incremental sort of thermometer thing shows progress towards its completion. So you can see just by looking at it that this is done, this is 75% done, this really big thing's only a quarter done, we haven't started processing payments yet. I can tell you that in 5 seconds. You can look at it quicker, but without this chart, without the visual, it's pretty hard to get across. It's much harder to get across. The red one's in trouble.
Yeah.
So the red one's 95% done, but we're past November already. The last thing I'll talk about is data entry. So your metrics and the measurements shouldn't be so onerous that they're not worth doing. They should be self-emergent. They should just come out of the things that you're doing. If you're already using story points, just record them. If you've got some stories moving across the wall, just try and mark the date when it goes in and when it goes out, and that'll do for your cycle time. We'll put some dots on there every day. But don't make these things, if you're making the data collection for the creation of this type of visual too hard, it won't stick. You'll never do it, and especially if you're asking other people to collect that sort of information, you'll get a lot of pushback. No one's going to really want to do that. So this is an example of, so the charts that I've got, the ones that relate to bug tracking, so not the last ones, but the ones before. These are the spreadsheets which gather that information. So on the bug tracking, it's just bugs in and bugs out, and the rest is calculated, and the chart is drawn from that. Bugs in and bugs out. The forecast data only has 4 things to track. You know that Lighthouse thing? It allows the person running or inspecting the project or observing the project to make an estimate of what they think the backlog currently represents. So it's going to draw a line to where the project finishes, but it says, hey, if you're the project manager, say, and you've got a backlog of this much, do you reckon that's 80%, 20%, 100% of what's still left to do? Because you're going to feel like, yeah, we've got a backlog of 150 story points, but I reckon that's only 80%. So it'll make that exhaustion calculation based on whether or not it's 80%. This is story points, this is velocity, and this one gives you budget spent. So that'll do all of those charts. Those 4 data collection points will give you all of those project charts and also the time and budget chart. Cycle data is pretty easy. Name of the thing, name of the sort of story point size, when it was in and when it was out. Easy. They're really easy data collection, stuff that you already know about. Just put it down somewhere and you can get this sort of visual happening. All right, so I'm finished. What I had planned to do, I've done this talk once before and I passed out CDR copies of everything, and this was my chart on the usefulness of CDR over time. But you know how this isn't even accurate now. This has got to be 0 because I went yesterday and I got some CDs and I went last night to burn them and realised only too late that my flash new Mac doesn't even have a thing to burn them. So the best I can do is tell you that I want to acknowledge these people who have sort of given me some ideas and some good things to review in coming up with my charts and my views on charting. This guy's, Mike Griffiths is great. He's really like a super project nerd, but he's fighting the fight, believe me, I love his writing. You see his old-fashioned website. Earned value, everyone knows Alistair Coburn, and this guy is from New Zealand, John Rusk. He had the stuff about earned value. The earned value stuff came from those two blokes. So you can get that stuff there, but you can also get all of the charts that you saw, all of the project charts and the team charts that you saw there, plus some others I've put on my website here at scrummage.com. All free, just download them. It'll be great if you put a comment on the post if you use them. That'll be good. So I know that there's someone reading it. And that you can get Excel versions and Google Docs versions there. So hopefully you find some of those useful. Hopefully you found the talk useful. And because I'm finding the other talks useful, I hope to see some of you talking and maybe shake a few of your hands later on. See ya.